Hello everyone, Mocha Bear here. Welcome back to Mocha Bear's Hobby Den. Today's video is going to be about how to get started with building and painting your minis and models. Shall we get started? So for today's video, you have one of my subscribers to thank for, Warren Rawlings or Z Roden. Thank you for the suggestion and your comment. It had never crossed my mind to make a video on how to get started in building and painting minis. And that's a really good idea. Wish I had thought about it. So thank you again for the suggestion. I truly appreciate it. You are responsible for this video being made. So first things first. This is going to be focusing more heavily on Warhammer, but it can be used for any minis, especially the painting portion. And there will be a timestamp here telling you what time to go to if you want to check out how to get started with painting. But now that D&D has minis that you can build, such like the Frameworks mini we have here that I'm going to be building for a friend, this entire video can now be working for D&D as well. First, you need to figure out what minis you are going to want to do. You have Gunpla, which is Gundams. I believe I pronounced that correctly. You have Warhammer 40K and Age of Sigmar. You have D&D. There's even board games that have minis like that. In fact, I did an unboxing video for a Kickstarter board game of Wolfenstein. All those minis in there, I could have built myself, but I paid extra to have them built, which saved me hours of work. So you just need to pick what minis, what hobby you're going to be getting into that will be requiring building. But for this instance, we're going to be going with Warhammer 40K, specifically since I have a plethora of minis at my disposal from my desk, and those are the only ones that I have miniatures painted for as well. So you're going with Warhammer 40K. You need to figure out what army you want to build. For this instance, we will be using necrons. Once you have your box of the minis that you're going to be building, you're going to open up the box and you're going to see something like this. Now this is from the Leviathan box set. And in order to get your sprue from looking like this to this, you're going to need some tools. One particular tool in general, clippers. Now these are the older edition of the official Citadel or Games Workshop clippers. I actually got these from a Warhammer store years ago when I first got into the hobby during 8th edition. These were 33 bucks. I still have the price tag on the back, 33 bucks. There are new clippers out now, or snippers, whatever you wish to call them. They are out now. They came out during 9th edition. I believe they came out last year, actually, in 2023. So I don't know how those feel, how they look in person, but they're the ones you're going to most likely be seeing in your hobby stores. So you're going to need some snippers. Now, if you're looking to save yourself some money, there is a cheaper route to go, and that would be to get the paint and tool set right here. So this comes with a pair of small clippers. I don't recommend using if you have big hands. They're a little uncomfortable if you're going to be cutting a lot of minis out from their sprues, but it's a good place to start. You also get the little mini metal mold line remover right there. Again, I recommend upgrading to the Citadel clippers and mold line remover if you can. But the little mold line remover, it does its job. You get the starter paintbrush, which is still really good. You can use that for pretty much all the painting you need, but I do recommend getting another brush or two to go with it. And then it comes with 13 different paints that can be used to paint Space Marines for Ultramarine color scheme, or for painting Tyranids for the Leviathan paint scheme. And then for some test painting, I recommend getting one of these. You've got the Infernus Marines in paint set, and then the Termagants and Rippers in paint set. It will come with 3 minis, except for the Tyranids one that comes with 3 Termagants and then a Ripper Swarm. It'll come with the paints required to paint them in their respective paint schemes according to the lore, which is Ultramarines versus Leviathan High Fleet, and they come with a starter brush. So if you get at least one of these two and the paint and tool set, you will get 2 brushes, which, though they're the same brush, still good to have a backup brush. And the minis in the box, depending on which one you get, if you get both, cool. You can use those for test painting, and you can work on your paint scheme. You can work on your painting techniques. Watch painting videos, how to paint Warhammer mini videos. They are going to help you a lot, and these will be your tests. So in my opinion, that is the best route to go to get yourself confident enough for building minis and painting minis, especially with painting, because in my opinion, it takes a lot more confidence to paint minis than it does to build. Now, if you're someone like me that has big hands, I do highly recommend getting the bigger snippers, or as these are called, fine detail cutters. I do recommend getting these over using the small one that comes with your little box set. But the ones that come with that set will do just fine. And the mold line remover, again, it's useful. It's very useful. However, big hands here again, so I have the official Citadel mold line remover. Again, got this during 8th edition. There is a new one out now that came out during 9th edition last year. So you're probably going to be seeing that more than you will ever see this in the stores. I recommend getting one because I've seen on some of my older minis that I didn't use it on, their mold lines are showing through the paint and they're kind of unseemly. Thankfully, they're in spots that aren't very noticeable unless you're like looking at it. But clippers, cutters, snippers, whatever you wish, and mold line remover. Highly recommend getting these. If not at starting, eventually. And there are some people out there who prefer to use X-Acto blades or hobby knives instead of a mold line remover, just because they don't have to apply as much pressure, even though you don't really have to apply a lot anyway, depending on how tough the mold line is. So you can always get a hobby knife. Now, this is the Army Painter hobby knife. I got this last year as well. I've only used it a few times for very tough mold lines and ones that were hard to reach. And it comes with replaceable blades, very useful, and very nice comfortable fit for my hand. And a little advanced tool you could get is a little hand drill. Now, I believe this was also an Army Painter hand drill. It comes with 3 different size drills that you can use. Can't remember the exact measurements, but I think the maximum is like a 3mm, which I have in right now. I also have magnets, some very tiny magnets. You can barely see them right there against the little wrench bit. And then I have a thumbtack in there. I use the thumbtack to start out my holes that I'm going to be drilling, and those are for barrels. Specifically, I use them for my Space Marines barrels and my Death Guard Army's barrels. I use that for those. However, I also use it for putting magnets in, which I've done for my Necron Annihilation Barge / Catacomb Command Barge. I have to finish the second one, and that happened because I found a video of IDIC Beer here on YouTube, shout out to him again, where he did a video on how to magnetize your barge. I've said this before, I'll say it again, check out his channel. Fantastic YouTuber, fantastic Necron player. I love watching his battle reports because he has fun. Once you've gotten your sprue from looking like this to this, you've snipped all the pieces off, you are going to need plastic glue. Now, in my Imotekh and Orikan build and paint video, you saw the little bottle of plastic glue that I use. I just ordered some, so I'm waiting on it to show up. It's gonna take a week for it to arrive. You will need that. And I also highly recommend getting some super glue. This is Loctite super glue. Really easy to use. Put aside and you actually squeeze the sides. Someone actually commented on my Imotekh and Orikan video suggesting that I get Loctite super glue, not realizing that the super glue I had was Loctite super glue. I do not use super glue unless I am putting together already painted minis. So like how I partially assembled Imotekh the Stormlord and didn't put his loincloth piece on or his cloak on him, I painted them, waited for them to dry, and then I used my Loctite super glue to glue them on, so that way it doesn't melt the paint and make it smear and run and all that stuff and make it look unsightly. And I have seen so many videos of people recommending different types of plastic glue. I have only ever used the Citadel's plastic glue. So I recommend getting that and another type of super glue. In fact, this is the one that's always highly recommended by a bunch of hobbyists. So I do plan on getting that at some point to try out myself, and I can give my honest review on how it feels for me. A lot of people swear by this. Try them out yourself, see which one you like better. And when you are building your mini, I always recommend dry fitting. And that means taking 2 pieces that are supposed to be glued together and just pushing them together and holding them to make sure that they look right and they fit right. So that way you can just take them apart, glue them, and then push them together, because you do not, especially with plastic glue, you do not want to put glue on the pieces and then try fitting them together and finding that it's not the correct angle and you're fiddling around with it, because the plastic glue melts the plastic together. So it will actually become soft and malleable and you will deform them. Always dry fit. But once you're done gluing your mini, you will come up with something like this. Now this is a Technomancer from the Necron army, and this mini is unpainted. I have some pieces that I need to file down, as this was actually one of the first models that I put together. And I think I have 3 of this exact model. One is still in a bigger box that hasn't even been taken off the sprue yet. And this is a mini that I would highly recommend partial building. Sadly, I didn't start doing partial builds till after I had put this and the second one together. So this is one where you would want to keep the guy himself separate from this, from the cloak that's on his back, because you actually glue him to that. I'd recommend painting all of it, then super gluing him to the cloak. Now, once your mini is done being built and glued together, you're going to need to paint. I was not confident in painting my minis, but I was lucky and fortunate enough that my army, the Necrons, are a simple army to paint. You mainly need a silver paint, and then you can add a few colors to different things if you want. So before you start painting, I highly recommend looking up videos here on YouTube on how to paint the minis that you are working on. So if you're working on Necrons, if you're working on the Necron Technomancer, for example, look up on YouTube how to paint the Necron Technomancer, or just how to paint Necrons in general, because it's pretty much the same technique the whole way. And of course, you can look up how to paint D&D minis, like all that stuff. Everything you can find, almost everything here on YouTube. And I will admit, after watching about 50 videos, I'm not even exaggerating, about 50 at the very least, on how to paint Necrons. I looked at different paint schemes, different styles, all of that. I finally felt confident to paint some models. But when you're gonna start painting your minis, I didn't have them at the time, and I was like, I don't need them. I highly recommend getting the rattle can, spray can, whatever, for priming your minis. Now, you have the official Citadel, you have Army Painter, there's a bunch of others out there. I get the Citadel Lead Belcher spray can, the primer, for my Necrons. And I have a few different others for different armies that I'm getting ready to start working on. Get one of these. They are a godsend. And since we are on the topic of these, you're going to see some people using a paint handle. This is what it looks like. You don't need that. If you're going to be batch priming your models, you don't need that thing. All you need is a stick like this and some double-sided tape. These cost me, I think it was 12 bucks at most. I think it was like 12 bucks for these. Saved myself money. And you can hold bigger models on this than you can that little plastic thing. All you need to do is just take your tape, pull it off, stick it to the front, roll it down as far as you need for however many models you're going to be priming, cut it, peel the top layer off to expose the other side of the tape, and then just stick your minis on there. And of course, do not stick them straight on like this, straight up from the top down in the center, because if they're smaller bases, they'll be difficult to reach, and you try to pull them off, and you're going to potentially smear some paint, scratch paint, whatnot, maybe even pull them off the bases. I recommend sticking them more to the side so they are easier to grab from off the stick. And of course, get some kind of little mask, something to cover your nose and mouth while you're painting so you're not inhaling those fumes. And of course, always prime outside. Do not prime inside. Once your minis are primed, they'll look like this. So this is a Technomancer that I primed in Lead Belcher. I have not painted yet, but you are going to want to follow the directions on the can, and you're going to want to do thin layers. Now, if you can't afford to find the spray cans, but you can find the pots of paint, you can always get the color you want in a little pot like this. So this is Lead Belcher right here. This is what I used to prime my minis before I got the spray can. I probably primed roughly 30 minis using one of these. The spray can is a time saver. Get the spray can if you can. But I used that. The reason I say to watch a lot of how to paint videos is because one thing that I did not know before I started, thin your paints. You are going to need to thin your paints, especially using a base paint like that, because that is a base layer. So base layers, base paints are thick and goopy. You're going to need to thin them. When you are painting your minis, use multiple thin layers rather than 1 to 2 thick layers, because it will hide all the detail if you do not thin down your paints. So you're going to be painting your minis. You need to figure out what color scheme you're going to want to go with, what army you're painting. If you're going to go just by how they look in the books or art, that's fine. If you want to go with your own custom color scheme, you can do that. My necrons have the typical silver base because the new Runelord brass bodies didn't really get introduced till 9th edition. Before that, the main bodies typically were silver. But I went with a custom dynasty scheme where all their shoulder pieces are a dark earthy green and their cloaks are typically like a gold or a brass. And the gold or brass would depend on my dynasty's lore and how old or new their units are. The more ancient models will typically have the duller brass color, while the newer ones have the more golden color. And there are different paints, like you heard me say about base paint. This here is called Wraithbone. You're looking at that, it's kind of weird and gray looking, but you hear Wraithbone, like that doesn't look like bone. Well, with your paints, before you open them to start using them, you're going to need to shake them. And you will see now, it actually is more of a bone, tannish cream color because the different inks and everything need to be mixed together. So you have base paints. You have layer paints. Now this is called pallid witch flesh. Layer paints are thinner than base paints, but as you can see, it is rather dark in there with bits of tan. Well, same as the base. Shake it up, and it all mixes together. Next up we have contrast paints. Now these are very liquidy, runny. You don't need to water these down unless you want to make the color more thin. I still shake them up before using them anyway, just to make sure everything is mixed well. Then we have shades, again, liquidy, still shake them up before use. And then technical paints. Now there are various different types of technical paints. This one is a liquid. Then there's more textured ones like sterling mud and I believe it's technogranite. Those are used more for basing your models. So you need to figure out what you're going to do. Hence why I said earlier, get these 2 boxes here and you can use those for your testing. Now, once you've done painting your mini, you can use the technical paint to base and design the base that your model is going to be standing on. So like I said, I use the Astral Granite is the one I use for my Necrons. The model will look like this. I have them all painted up, trying to get them to focus. It's trying to focus on something over here. There we go. And you can see right here on the base, it's all like gravelly looking. That is the technical paint Astral Granite that I used. And again, there's different ones. Sterling Mud makes it look like mud. In fact, you can see here, that actually looks like mud. And then the little green puddles that you're seeing there, like slime, is made to look like swamp. Now, I can't remember the name of the technical paint. It took me a while to be able to find it. And since my Death Guard army is going to be based to look like they're standing in a swamp, I got some tufts to put on them. Specifically, the Army Painter Swamp Tufts. These are going to be, I need to just use some regular glue, like you can use Elmer's glue, whatever, and just take one of these off, dab some glue onto the bottom. Use your tweezers. I recommend having tweezers to do it, just that way you can set them down without smushing them, and just put them onto the base. Now, when I do my next Death Guard model, I will do that here on the channel for you all. In fact, I probably will do Typhus, which is a big named character for the Death Guard. So when I do him, I will show you using the tufts. I also have some that I'm using for my Tyranids based on their lore and their color scheme, so I can't wait to show you that. Now, you don't need tufts. Those are just an optional thing. I didn't start doing it until I got my Tyranid army started. Even when you're done painting your minis, those are things you can still add on later. And to start your painting, other than your paints, you need paintbrushes. Now, I have quite a lot of different paintbrushes from different places. I have the official Citadel paintbrushes. So I have the extra large base here, and then the large base here. And then this here is an Army Painter dry brush. This is an Army Painter detail brush. Here is a Citadel medium shade brush, and this is a medium layer brush by Citadel. This is actually the starter brush from the Necron box that I was talking about that I had for 9th edition. I don't really use this often except for using certain texture paints. And then I also use this for another thing that I use called liquid green stuff. Now this is what it looks like here. And then next to that is the typical style of green stuff that you'll see. Now the putty style, you are going to tear apart and mix together till it turns green. And that is used for like creating molds, for making little additional details. For like Death Guard, you can make tentacles out of that. Or the way I use it is to fill spaces and gaps in the minis. I use the liquid green stuff just because it was easier and I don't have to worry about it going like drying out quickly and can be smoothed out better. And you don't need additional tools that you would for the putty style. All you need is your brush and just to damp it a bit. And then these I got from my local Michael's, I believe. These are just some of the many different brushes that I have. But when you're starting out, you only really need the one base brush that comes with the starter, and then maybe a thin brush for details that you'll need, some small details. So you're gonna need at least 2 brushes, but you can get them cheap from a local hobby store. And then next up, you're going to need a cup. Now, Games Workshop, Citadel, they have their official paint cup. This is what it looks like here. You don't need that. If you want it to support them, sure, go ahead. You can even paint it if you want. You don't need it. All you need is like a plastic cup. You can go to the dollar store and get one, like a little kid cup, or disposable red plastic cups like this. As you can see, this one, I have used it. This is actually the one I used for the Imotekh and Orikan video. You don't need an expensive plastic cup just for your water to rinse off your brushes. And there's another tool that you may need if you're going to be using technical paints that are textured, like Astrogranite, like I said, that you saw on my Technomancer's base. You are going to need, don't use a brush, use one of these. This is a texture tool. I got this from Games Workshop directly from their Warhammer store online. It came with a pack of 3 and it wasn't expensive. Very useful tool. As you can see, it's got a spade side and then a thinner side. Again, there are plenty of videos here on YouTube on how to use these. In fact, Warhammer TV, the Warhammer YouTube actually has a video on how to use them, so you can look those up easily. Again, that is a texture tool, a Games Workshop or Citadel texture tool. Next up, you'll need a spot to put your paints on before putting them on the mini. And there are 2 routes you can go that way. You can go with paint palettes like this. So you have the little one here, you can put your thumb through. You can see I've gotten quite a bit of use out of this. So open it up and it has different slots. And of course with this, you can also put your thumb through it. This is what I was heavily using when I started painting. And then I moved on to getting this because I was running out of rooms for painting. As you can see, I do not clean these out. I need to scrub them clean. And it's got little spots to hold your brushes. These I got from different stores. This I got from Walmart. I think this was $8. Now this I got from a dollar store, I believe. Yeah, a dollar store for this. Then recently I got specifically to use for my Orikan and Imotekh video, I decided to finally invest in what's called a wet palette. This is a wet palette. Now I'm not going to hold it up too much just because it does have some water in there. This is the official Army Painter wet palette. I got it on Amazon because my local store didn't have it, and I had been watching videos on how to use wet palettes. You can make them at home yourself. You can find a bunch of those here on YouTube to use to make your own wet palette. In fact, IDIC Beer, again, made his own wet palette. This has 3 layers. It has the lid, which can come off. So you can see it has the Army Painter name on there. But it has this little here to hold your brushes. Now you can hold the specific like Army Painter themed brushes and then additional brushes here, but take this out and below, actually in fact you can see this is still damp with water. You can see in here is the sponge and one of the wet sheets and my paints from that Imotekh and Orikan video. As you can see, they're still glossy and wet. I did that video over 2 weeks ago. The paints are still wet and ready to go. Highly recommend working up the confidence to get and use a wet palette. Highly recommend. So I hope that that was helpful, educational, maybe answered some questions you may have had. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate. Comment down below, Ask me your questions. If I can answer them, I will answer them as soon as I can. Otherwise, I will try to find the answer for you, and I will try to direct you to that source as well. I want to help grow the hobby world. We've got Warhammer, we've got D&D, we've got board games, we've got cosplayers, we've got so many other tabletop RPGs like Pathfinder, Mutants and Masterminds, we've got The Walking Dead now. There's so many different tabletop RPGs out there. Star Wars. Big Star Wars nerd myself. But I want this to be a place where the community can grow and interact with each other and me. So please do not ever hesitate to ask your questions. Make sure anything you say is appropriate and on topic or related to it. No need to be mean or cruel to anybody down below or to me. I believe I have addressed everything. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Again, I ask you, why haven't you subscribed yet? Hit the bell icon and set notifications to all so you get notified when I upload videos. And if I start streaming, when my streams go live, comment down below what you thought was interesting, if you were confused on anything, if you'd like to add to anything that I said, feel free. And then please share this video. Any interactions with this video are appreciated and helpful, and feel free to do that with all of my videos. Any interactions, liking, commenting, sharing, definitely subscribe. It is very helpful on the channel growing. Again, I am still slowly growing. I am getting very close to 200 subscribers. I'm already in the 190s right now. Never thought that I would get even close to this, and we are going to be reaching our 2nd year anniversary, I think in June or July this year. I'll have to take a look again because I forgot last year when my anniversary was. Please continue to interact with these videos and share them. Spread the love, spread the hobby awareness. Gonna go ahead and end it there before I continue going on because I will think of things to say. So again, Warren Rawlings or Z Roden, thank you so much for the suggestion, for your comment, and the idea of making this video. Truly, truly appreciate it. I appreciate you. Everyone, please, as always, take care of yourselves. And until next time, hobby on.